Imagine coming home to a house that is everything you ever wanted. 3 beautiful children, a comfortable suburban life, and a husband who finally tells you the truth about everything. On paper, we are the perfect success story of a couple who survive an affair. But as I stand in our kitchen tonight, looking at the man I've shared 6 years with, I realize the most painful truth of all. He has finally become the honest man I begged him to be. And that honest man just told me he feels absolutely nothing when he looks at me. My name is Sarah, and at 32, I thought I was living the second chapter of a hard-won victory. My husband, Mark, and I have been married for 6 years. We built a life in a quiet neighborhood, balanced our careers, and navigated the chaos of raising 3 kids. But our foundation didn't just crack. It shattered last Mother's Day. I didn't find out through a late-night text or a hidden receipt. I found out because Mark made a mistake that felt like a scripted cruelty. He mailed Mother's Day flowers to a co-worker instead of me. That one bouquet exposed a month-long betrayal. In an instant, I wasn't a wife or a mother in his eyes. I was the person he was looking past. The months that followed were a blur of tears, expensive marriage retreats, and weekly counseling sessions. To his credit, Mark stepped up. He cut ties with the other woman immediately. He leaned into the work. We talked about things we hadn't touched in years. We realized the affair started because he didn't know how to be vulnerable with me. He had sought emotional refuge elsewhere because he felt he couldn't open up at home. So we fixed it. Or so I thought. We practiced radical transparency. We had scheduled date nights. I stopped tracking his location. I stopped checking his phone. I gave him back his independence because I wanted a partner, not a prisoner. Through the therapy, my trust actually started to grow back. It was a miracle, right? But as the trust returned, I noticed something terrifying. While I was leaning back into him, Mark was drifting into a different kind of distance. It's a quiet, polite distance that is far harder to fight than anger. By the time autumn hit, the warmth in our house had changed. The air felt thinner. We were communicating better than ever, but it was a communication of 2 high-level business partners managing a very complicated household. We were succeeding at the logistics of marriage while the soul of it was being quietly evicted. The breaking point came in October. No fight, no drama. Just a conversation on the edge of the bed that felt like a death sentence. I reached for his hand, and he didn't pull away, but he didn't hold it back either. I asked him why he hadn't kissed me in weeks, why the romance seemed to have evaporated just as the honesty arrived. He looked at me with a kindness that hurt worse than a slap and said, "Sarah, I see you as my best friend. I see you as an incredible mother and the best co-parent I could ask for. But I don't have romantic feelings for you anymore. They're just gone." Since that day, I've been living in a psychological purgatory. I am friend-zoned by my own husband in the house we pay for together. We share a mortgage, we share a bed, we share the responsibility of 3 small lives, but we don't share a spark. I tell him I love him, and he says he cares about me. The most twisted part? He gets upset when I'm sad about it. If I show the heartbreak I'm feeling, he says it makes him feel like a failure, which only pushes him further away. I'm expected to be grateful for his honesty and his presence, while starving for his affection. He mentions divorce casually, like he's considering changing a car insurance policy, but then he stays. We are playing a high-stakes game of chicken, waiting to see who will be the one to finally shatter the perfect co-parenting routine we built. My therapist asked me a question last week that I couldn't answer. Why are you still standing in a room where the door is wide open and the heater is turned off? I'm still here because you can't switch off love like a lamp. I'm still here because I'm terrified that if I leave, I'm the one breaking the family, even though he's the one who checked out. But I'm starting to realize that staying for the kids is teaching them that marriage is a cold, silent arrangement based on endurance rather than joy. Is it possible for a spark to return after a year of coldness? Maybe, but at what cost to my soul? I'm learning that there's a massive difference between a stable household and a loving marriage. Rebuilding trust is only half the battle. You can't negotiate desire. I'm standing at the edge of a choice. I can keep living as the best friend to a man who broke my heart twice, or I can find the strength to demand a life where I'm not just a co-parent, but a woman who is actually wanted. If you've ever felt like a ghost in your own home, you know that the silence is louder than any argument. We stay because we hope, but sometimes hope is just a way of prolonging the pain. If you were in my shoes, would you keep waiting for the spark to come back? Or is it time to stop being a great co-parent and start being a whole person again? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'm reading them all tonight. I sat him down and handed him my phone, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. On the screen was everything I couldn't say out loud. A post I'd written to strangers about how I felt I was losing him. For months, our bedroom had been silent, my libido non-existent, and the distance between us felt like a physical weight. I watched his eyes move across the text, waiting for the explosion. But when he finished, he didn't scream. He simply pulled me onto his lap and held me until I broke. My name is Maya, my husband David, and I have always been that solid couple. But after our second child, something shifted in me. The exhaustion of motherhood didn't just take my energy, it took my desire. Every time he reached for me, I felt a wave of guilt, then a wave of resentment. I started rejecting him, not because I didn't love him, but because I felt poured out. I didn't realize that in my attempt to be the perfect mother, I was effectively firing him from the role of my husband. I thought he understood. I thought we were just in a dry spell. I didn't know that while I was struggling to find myself again, David was struggling to survive the rejection. That night, after I finally stopped crying in his arms, the radical honesty began. He looked me in the eye and swore he hadn't cheated. He told me I was the love of his life. But then he paused. He told me there was a truth that would make me insecure, something he would only share if I was truly ready to hear it. I told him I needed to know. He explained that my consistent rejection had decimated his self-worth. To him, I wasn't just his wife, I was his lifeline. Being unwanted by the person you love most in the world is a specific kind of agony. David used to be a Romeo before we met, charismatic, noticed, and always pursued. When he married me, he shut that part of himself down completely. He didn't need external validation, because he had mine. But when mine vanished, that old version of him started to wake up. He admitted that lately, he had stopped shutting down the attention from other women. When a stranger at a coffee shop flirted, he didn't look away like he used to. He let himself feel seen. He started going out to new restaurants and social events more often, intentionally putting himself in environments where he felt lighter and noticed. He wasn't looking for a physical affair, but he was starving for the feeling of being desired. Hearing this felt like a second betrayal, even though he hadn't done anything technically wrong. He admitted that he had started to view me solely as the mother of his children rather than his partner. He told me he was happy our kids had a mother who prioritized him so deeply, but he was mourning the loss of the woman who used to love him. The guilt is eating me alive. I know my distance drove him to this, but knowing he's out there soaking up the attention of other women to fill the hole I left makes my skin crawl. He apologized for taking me for granted and for not seeing how much I would struggle with my own changes. He wants to work through it. He's asking me how we proceed. But how do you compete with the lightness of a stranger's flirtation when you're the one carrying the heavy reality of a household, laundry, and a mortgage? He's been honest, but that honesty has created a new kind of wall between us. Now, every time he goes out to a new restaurant or a work event, I'm left wondering if he's there for food or for the way the waitress looks at him. I ask for time to process. I realize that we both fail to protect the us in the midst of the them. I prioritized the children until there was nothing left for the man who helped me create them. And he, instead of forcing a hard conversation, looked for a bandage in the eyes of strangers. We are at a crossroads. Can a relationship survive when the spark is being sought elsewhere? I want to find my desire again, but it's hard to feel romantic when you feel like you're being compared to every woman in a crowded room. I'm learning that marriage isn't just about loyalty in the physical sense. It's about emotional boundaries. It's about being the person who makes your partner feel seen so they don't have to look for that light anywhere else. But that's a two-way street. I have to want him, and he has to be patient enough to let me find my way back to him without seeking reassurance from the rest of the world. Is it possible to heal the hurt when the rejection was a catalyst? Or has the Romeo in him already checked out of our quiet, suburban life? If your partner admitted they were seeking validation from others because you weren't providing it, would you feel guilty or would you feel betrayed? I'm struggling to find a line. Let me know what you think in the comments. We could really use the perspective right now. On Friday, I officially closed the door on my dreams. 10 years of blood, sweat, and tears poured into an art career that left me with nothing but a pile of debt and a broken spirit. I thought I had reached rock bottom. But on Saturday, the man I've loved for 7 years looked at me across a sea of moving boxes and told me he isn't attracted to me anymore. They say when it rains, it pours. But this felt like a flood meant to wash away everything I had left. My name is Chloe. At 29, I'm supposed to be at my peak, but instead, I'm standing in a collapsed life. My boyfriend, Marcus, is 27. We've been together since we were practically kids. Lately, our house has felt less like a home and more like a waiting room. I just gave up my failing art career, and Marcus is currently unemployed after dropping out of university. We are both in a massive slump, clinging to each other because we don't know what else to hold on to. We're in the middle of preparing to move to a new home near the city. A fresh start, a new chapter. Or at least, that's the story we tell ourselves to justify the expensive security deposit we can barely afford. The move was supposed to be our relaunch. But you can't relaunch an engine that's missing its spark. For months, maybe years if I'm honest with myself, the intimacy in our relationship has been a one-way street. I'm the one who initiates. I'm the one who reaches out in the middle of the night, only to find him turned away. He hasn't pursued me in a long, long time. Living with someone who loves you but doesn't want you is a slow-motion trauma. It erodes your confidence until you start looking in the mirror and wondering what's wrong with the person looking back. I finally reached my breaking point. While we were taping up boxes of old books, I stopped and asked him. No games, no hints. I asked him why he'd treat me like a roommate. I expected him to blame the stress of being unemployed. I expected him to blame the move. Instead, he gave me a truth that left me colder than the winter air outside. He admitted he just isn't attracted to me anymore. He tried to soften the blow with a medical excuse. He said he can't help it. It's his ADHD. He explained that his brain craves novelty, that new cars smell of a fresh relationship, and that after 7 years, the chemistry just isn't firing. But then he said the most confusing thing. He still loves me. He still wants us to get married. He still wants to move into this new house together. I suggested we research it. I told him there are ways to manage ADHD in long-term relationships, ways to keep that connection alive. But he shut it down instantly. He said looking into it makes him uncomfortable. Instead, he's hanging all his hopes on a fantasy. He told me that once we move to the city, and once he finally finds a job, everything will click back into place. He believes that a change in our bank account and a change in our zip code will magically make him want to touch my hand again. I want to believe him. I want to believe that financial stability and a new view from the window will save us. But as I look at him, I realize he isn't looking for a solution. He's looking for a distraction. I'm terrified I know how the novelty-seeking brain works. Right now, the novelty is the new house and the city lights. But what happens in 6 months when the city becomes familiar? What happens when the new job becomes a routine? Eventually, the only thing new left for him to try will be a life without me. I love Marcus. He has been my constant through the rise and fall of my career. But I don't want to be a habit. I don't want to be a safe place for someone to land while they wait for something more exciting to come along. I'm 29 years old, and I have to decide if I'm willing to move into a new house where I am fundamentally invisible. Money can be earned. Careers can be rebuilt from the ashes. But you cannot negotiate desire. You cannot move to a new city and expect a heart to change its mind about the person standing right in front of it. I'm starting to realize that the most expensive thing I own isn't the art I couldn't sell or the furniture in these boxes. It's the time I'm spending waiting for a man to see me again. Is it possible for a relationship to survive a total loss of attraction? Or is staying for love just a way of avoiding the pain of starting over? He says the move will fix us, but I feel like I'm just packing my heartbreak into a new set of walls. If your partner told you they loved you but weren't attracted to you, would you stay for the history? Or would you leave to find a future where you're actually wanted? Let me know in the comments. I'm reading them while I decide which boxes to unpack and which ones to keep taped shut.